Ever heard about the Shanghai apartment block, which toppled over in the middle of the night? What about the London office block, that accidentally transformed into a deadly heat ray? Today, donning our hard hats and exploring the most expensive construction mistakes in the world. The Aeon Center. In its heyday, the second tallest building on Earth, Chicago's Aeon Center, initially christened the Amoco Building, remains to this day an elegant expression of mid-century modernism. Architect Edward Darrell Stone, in what can only be described as an outrageous flex, decided to cloud his Grant Park masterpiece in Italian Carrara marble, a material favored by classical artisans since antiquity. The problem with that is Michelangelo wasn't building 83-story skyscrapers. The Windy City's dramatic temperature fluctuations caused the marble cladding to crack and warp, and when an entire panel broke off and crashed onto the rooftop of the neighboring Credential Center, well, it was high time for an $80 million granite reclad. Tacoma Narrows Bridge. The third longest suspension bridge in the world could already see which way the wind was blowing. That's why they nicknamed the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in Washington state, Galloping Gertie, even before it was finished. Some bright spark reckoned it would be a great idea to use cheap plate girders underneath the roadbed. After a rocky start, the bridge eventually just collapsed after 4 months and 7 days in a modest 40-mile-an-hour wind. The cost roughly $6 million, which in today's money after inflation works out, not far off $1 billion. 20 Fenchurch Street. When construction of this innovative curvy skyscrapers by the River Thames in London was completed in 2014, local wags took to calling it the pint glass, and engineers probably stiff drink. When it became obvious that their gigantic concave facade was focusing beams summer sunlight like a molten death ray trained onto the busy pavement below. One hapless flash car was partially melted, necessitating an embarrassing payout, and the hasty installation of a gigantic sunscreen that set developers back a cool $10 million. Sydney Opera House. Widely recognized as a triumph of aesthetics and an emblem of a young forward-thinking Australia, Sydney Opera House is in fact an object lesson in construction failure. In 1957, the Australian government held a contest to design a future national opera house. Winner John Hudson submitted his now iconic sail light design, which won over the judges, but little actual planning had gone into his pitch. This situation wasn't helped by the hasty construction schedule, and the fact the government swiftly decided it wanted 4 theaters rather than the initial 2 inside the same shaped structure. Without a single project manager in charge and a plan that evolved haphazardly over time, the budget spiraled. It should have taken 4 years and $4 million Australian dollars to complete, but in the end took nearly 14 years and an eye-watering $102 million Australian dollars. Their mistakes: simple old-fashioned rubbish planning. Lotus Riverside Building 7. In the early hours of June 27, 2009, residents of Shanghai's Menhang district awoke to an almighty crash. A 13-story building, part of an 11-building apartment complex that was in the final stages of completion, has toppled over, killing one Xiao Deacon, a 21-year-old construction worker. Investigators figured out that a large quantity of earth excavated to build an underground garage was foolishly dumped onto a nearby creek that caused the creek to divert underground, sweeping away building number 7's foundations. The estimated cost to the developer of this lackadaisical practice $30 million, and half a dozen jail terms for those responsible. Brandenburg Airport. The German people enjoy a reputation for technical efficiency, or, at least they did until a fairly humdrum city airport project that should have taken a couple of years and cost €2.5 billion opened a decade later, to the tune of €7 billion. What went wrong? All sorts. Sexually, for instance. It emerged 2 years into the project that Alfredo Di Mauro, chief planner for BER's fire protection system, was never actually qualified to be an engineer. Everyone thought I was an engineer, Di Mauro sheepishly told the DPA news agency. I just didn't contradict them. Whereupon Fire Chief Di Mauro was quite rightly fired. There was also an issue around roughly €500,000 of alleged bribes paid to corrupt officials, allegations of price fixing, and poor planning that led to the inadequate fire safety setup. Not to inadequate check-in and baggage handling facilities for the airport's expected traffic. Turns out the Germans just winging it. The Millennium Tower. The tallest residential tower in San Francisco stands 58 stories high, but it's shrinking so much so that between its unveiling in 2009 and today, it has already sunk some 18 inches and started ominously leaning 14 inches to the west. The problem: it's sitting on inappropriate ground, specifically Old Bay clay. The solution: drive 52,140,000 pounds piles, some 250 feet deep into the bedrock way under the city. In case you think that process, which is currently underway, comes cheap, it doesn't. The total bill, including compensation for the tower's well-heeled inhabitants, will come in at over $100 million. Whoops, and the sidewalk is already cracking, so they better get a move on. Harmon Hotel. The city of Las Vegas is no stranger to costly, regrettable errors, but rarely has an error been so lavish as the Harmon Hotel, designed by prestigious team at Foster & Partners Architects. The boutique hotel was initially slated to loom fully 4 stories over the world-famous Strip. However, building inspectors halted the project after just 26 stories had been erected. Noting that rebar reinforcements in the concrete had been inadequately installed, this meant the upper condo element was abandoned, despite some 88 excited rich punters putting deposits down. Eventually, Vegas authorities demanded the building be pulled down altogether. Not with a wrecking ball, but painstakingly, floor by floor. The cost of building up to this point had been an estimated $275 million, and the cost of demolition a further $173 million. What happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas, it turns out. What do you think? Is there a common thread to all these epic construction fails? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more rock-steady tech content.